Pulisic dentro, Rafa. Gol! Abraham! Gol! È l'azione più bella del mondo! È l'azione più bella!
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan podcast. I'm your host, Oli Fisher, joined once again by Anthony Torriani.
What's up, everyone? Glad to be back. If you're wondering why we are recording so late in the week and in the day, Madison was adamant that he attend this episode, so we moved things around for his schedule. We squeezed this in between my work day. I just got out of multiple hours of meetings, and I have another one in about an hour and 15, so squeezed it into a block of time that we could do, and to the surprise of absolutely fucking nobody, Madison thought it was Wednesday, and he cannot attend today. So we are here without him yet again. For the new listeners, you don't know who that is because it's been about 3 months. So we'll see him eventually. Who knows?
Superb. Yeah, I'm not adding anything to that. Nail on head. I do just love how in the last few weeks the first minute has been dedicated to bitching about why Maddie hasn't made it. Yeah. So he makes his own rod for his back or whatever. We've got some football to talk about. It's not competitive football. It is football. It's hand egg. No, it is soccer nonetheless out in the Far East. We've played the first two games of our pre-season tour of Asia and Australia against Arsenal and Liverpool. Two very contrasting, polarizing games, if you like. So we're going to dive into those, one more than the other for obvious reasons. And then we got another, the third one on the tour against Perth Glory to briefly preview because we're not well versed in the Hyundai A-League. I think it's still Hyundai that sponsors it, Hyundai. But yeah, and we have got a big list of listener questions in which we're going to try and touch upon all the topics as we're now at the end of July. It will be August before the end of the week. And, you know, we said it a few weeks ago when the transfer business was slow and preparations were only just beginning, how quickly the month of July flies by. And, you know, you're into the first month when competitive action is about to begin. Speaking of about to begin, before we dive fully into the episode, thank you to our Substack founding members, Des Windsor, McGlynn, Tito, Matt Moritz, Pullman, Joey Gawler, Kemin, MJ, Mats, Luke Villano, Raul Escobar, Jack Calafassi, Nasser, Merlin, Finker, Derek Favretto, Havanley 13, Mike Schulz, JT Physio, Tarek, Marco Villela, Roberto Racinos, Ken, Medicare, and Gianluca. I thought I could do it, I couldn't quite. Over on the Substack in the past week, the most recent pub chat went out yesterday with Lorenzo and Stefano. Midsummer thoughts. They're talking about the last couple of weeks in terms of the start of pre-season proper, the signing of Pervis Estupiñán, the gaps that are still in the squad, some other Mercato situations. So it's just like a bit of a taking stock type thing from them. 36 minutes of British accents and British people talking about a British sport. The most recent bonus article from Isaac, Milan's striker budget, how much and where from, is exactly that. There's been a lot spoken about when it comes to Milan pursuing a new centre forward, but there's been wildly conflicting reports on how much we'll be able to spend, who the targets might be, and when that signing might actually take place. You know, it's definitely going to slip into August here now. So there's that. And then the most recent bonus podcast was taken on for the first time ever by Mr. Moller and Ben Dixon, who appeared a few weeks ago on bonus when we did a squad building thing. They do a deep dive player profile on Pervis Estupiñán, bit of a statistical analysis, comparisons with Teo, that kind of thing. And the newsletter Torriani Mania in Singapore, which we are going to come on to his particular performance. But in there was the bulletin as well with the biggest stories from the past week on the main website. And proud to announce that we'll be slightly changing the website in the next 24 hours. It's not a radical overhaul in terms of the theme, but we've come up with a different layout that we hope will boost the user experience. No doubt there'll be some glitches that we encounter, but go check it out. It'll probably be live on, say, Wednesday. So let us know your thoughts. Feedback would be appreciated. Righto, let's go. Start with Arsenal. Let's gloss over this.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. So.
Yeah, you didn't watch it. I wish I hadn't watched it. this was officially the day that I went away as well. So it was kind of like, I should get through to the end of the day. And then I've got a few days in Spain. I don't have to think about this club for a little bit. But yeah, it was not a particularly great spectacle at the Singapore National Stadium. I'll just throw the lineup here. It was looking like it was going to be some sort of a 4-3-3. And then as we got closer to the game, it leaked that I think due to lack of a striker and due to lack of fullbacks, he decided to play a 3-5-2. Pavlovic, Tomori, Chow, the chosen three at the back. Interesting, no Gabia. That was the first thing that I noted. Maignan still not at 100% at this point, so Terracciano got the nod for the first half, at least between the sticks. Ricci, Musa, and Loftus-Cheek the midfield three. Salamakers and Bartazagi down the sides. Leao, Pulisic up top. Though I mean, I'll just go on a little rant about this particular game. It was exactly what we feared when we previewed it last week. You know, talking about coming up against a team that's certainly stronger than us. In terms of they had a far better last season than us. They're more ready in terms of their pre-season preparations because the Premier League starts sooner. They had more of a first 11 out there as a result of that. And yeah, just with where we're at, where they're at, probably a bit of a lack of quality and a lack of rhythm from us in this particular game plagued us, whereas they're stepping things up towards, as I said, the beginning of the campaign. It first half was semi-competitive. We had a couple of moments where we sat deep and we defended well for large parts of the game. I will give us that. But ultimately, you know, the forwards were feeding off scraps. You're relying on Leao to kind of carry it in transition. He had a couple of moments, one of which he overran. But yeah, it was basically just that. Us sitting back into a compact shape in our own third and then hoping to spring some counterattacks. What that meant was it was basically, and this only accelerated and magnified in the last half an hour of the game, it was a possession-based training drill for Arsenal, you know, where they were happy to knock it around the back, try get us moving from side to side. But one thing I will say is we didn't get baited into that. We actually defended solidly in this. You could see the presence of lines, you know, compact lines. And that was certainly something that I took as encouragement from this particular game. But there really wasn't an awful lot to talk about in terms of chances from either team until you get to Bukayo Saka's opening goal early in the second half. It was a cross whipped in from the left side. Unfortunately, it's Bartazagi who loses his man, just switches off ever so slightly. Saka gets goal side, maybe an ever so slightly offside. It's very close at the far post, but he bundles it in from close range. Nothing could be done about it, and that would prove to be the only goal of the game.
Was it Torriani in the goal when that happened, or?
No, Torriani came on for the final 25 minutes, and then I'm just going to say he stole the show. You know, despite the fact that we lost and we didn't score, we won the penalty shootout, and I know what I'd rather win.
Yeah, that means we won. So, you know,
exactly.
I never understood why. I mean, the why, I guess, is obviously more exciting, more fun, more practice, you know, but I never understood why we do mandatory penalty shootouts if there's a full-time winner. It seems a little silly in preseason, but you know, whatever, it's preseason, have fun. So I got the first maybe 25 to 30 minutes before I had to leave for work. And in that very, very brief amount of time that I got to watch, I didn't think we looked bad. I think, like you said, it was apparent that there was shape, which is good because we didn't have that at all last season. We barely had it under Pioli as well. But this was very rigid from that little bit of game that I got to watch, and that's exactly what Allegri brings. I don't know what the possession stats were, but I know it probably wasn't very good in our favor, and that's to be expected with Allegri. You're going to see that when we get to the next game as well. That's better than I thought, honestly. I expected like 38. That's what I was anticipating. But the shots is what is scary. 9 shots on target for Arsenal, but only 1 goal. So that actually kind of tells you a lot about Terracciano as a goalkeeper, and we'll get to it as well in the Liverpool game. But I actually really was impressed by him from what I saw against Liverpool, and he clearly did a good job against Arsenal as well. And I think we have a very sound and capable backup, something we've lacked quite a bit in the last maybe 5 or 6 years. So happy about that. But that's all I really have to add about this game.
Yeah, so the stats line there that I've just put up for those who are listening, it says we had 43% possession, and I believe that that's from the CBS thing, I think, which I was also watching on for some reason. I don't know. That's just what the thing was that I was watching on. The totally illegal stream that I found to watch the game. They made a comment about the possession number being wrong pretty much all game, and it felt a bit like that. I honestly thought it was more like 65% Arsenal, but it's whatever, for reasons mentioned, it's probably to be expected, but even still, it looks a bit better for us there. But yeah, 9-1 in terms of shots on target. It kind of tells the story. Us only having 3 shots in the entire game. The pass numbers are shorter than, closer together than I thought, though, I must say, because it felt like Arsenal, had 5 passes for every one of ours, but that wasn't the case. And maybe that tells a little story as well. And I agree with you. I thought Torriani looked relatively solid. I thought that pretty much everyone in the rear guard did a decent job, of doing their particular job and not trying to go above and beyond that. I thought Tomori in particular looked pretty damn sharp. Now, he was to kind of undo himself a little bit in the next game, which we'll come on to. But there were just little positives to pick out, really. And Torriani was definitely the biggest one, because by the end of this game, when it became sort of kids v kids, but them on top in the game, they were peppering the net. They had a shot from Reece Nelson that Torriani saved very well. I think there was one from Odegaard and one from Trossard. Again, saved very well, reflex stops. But the one that stood out above all was a Mikel Merino header from a corner that he looked to be unsighted for, and then just got down with a strong left hand and parried it away. I think without, if there's even an average performance from Torriani, we're looking at a 3-0 or a 4-0 game. But he kept the scoreline kind of respectable in that sense. Stats-wise, he made 5 saves in the 24 minutes that he was on the field, completed 10 out of 10 passes, which is what it is, but 5 out of 5 accurate long balls. Once again, like he did last summer in those friendlies in the USA, showing himself to be really comfortable and really solid with the ball at his feet. And I think that's good, because we know how we want to play. And I think a big part of the reason why Allegri wanted to keep Maignan is because he wants a goalkeeper who doesn't mind being in possession. Torriani showing again that he can do that. And then we come on to the shootout where he saved 3 penalties. I don't even know what to say about it, because the shootout was a bit of a joke. It was a poor shootout for most of it, and then both teams couldn't stop scoring. And in the end, we got over the line. I think it was a 15-year-old kid who took their decisive one that was missed, laced it over the bar. So it is what it is. Like, he'll learn. And then I think it was Komoto for us who scored the winning. Yeah, who scored a winning penalty. I mean, he's not much older. He's only 17, but yeah, I mean, that was a little something at the end of the game, a little show for everybody, I suppose. But that's it. There wasn't too much to take from it. Felt very much like an early pre-season game. Felt like we're used to, with the Premier League side sort of dominating us and us just trying to stay in the game. And that made me fearful going into the Liverpool game, to put it bluntly, because they should have been an even stronger opponent based on what happened last season, and again, even further ahead in their preparation. Any closing remarks on Arsenal, or shall I skip ahead?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. That's all I got.
No, Senator, I'm Singaporean. That got a run out in the chat. I just belted that. I love that clip. Anyway, I'll display the team here that we played against Liverpool at the Hong Kong Stadium. I forgot what it's called. I think it's named after somebody, but yeah, Hong Kong.
Yeah,
Hong Kong Park, something like that, maybe. 3-5-1-1 is what you'll notice if you're looking at the graphic. If you're listening, it is effectively the same team as the game against Arsenal, but with a couple of changes. Mike Maignan comes in goal in place of Torriani. Yusuf Fofana in the midfield instead of Musa. And you've got Pulisic acting behind Leao instead of them being in a front two, like a split striker type thing. But yeah, everything the same in terms of the back three, the wing backs, Richie and Loftus-Cheek getting the start again. Now, this was a far more entertaining watch.
Yeah, that was a good game.
It actually was a good game. There was moments in it when I was kind of getting Well, I'll say it. I was getting a bit excited about what I was seeing, and you very briefly forget that it's a pre-season game because you're seeing all the names still. Like Salah
Yeah.
was still out there, Szoboszlai's still out there, Wirtz was out there, and it's like you just have to like
Yeah.
cool it down and be like, okay, no, this.
So they being Liverpool fans, because I had to go on Twitter just for funsies,
naturally.
and they want to be like, "Well, what happened when we played our starters in the Champions League?" Well, that was a game we had Torriani in goal, by the way, that they beat us, and we still scored in the opening 5 minutes. But I looked at those lineups, and there were only 4 players missing from this lineup that were in that lineup. So it's basically the same team. Obviously, they had a 17-year-old on on the wing. I'm trying to pronounce his name, Ngoma,
Keep going.
who is fantastic, by the way. I thought he was a really good player. And then obviously Wirtz played and didn't play last season because he wasn't there. And Wirtz is not someone that you could say is a downgrade from what they had before. So, obviously, look, it was their first preseason game, which is odd given how late it is into the Premier League preseason right now. You would assume that they would have had a few more. Maybe they had some training ground games, but I don't think they were at their full strength, nor should anyone really read too much into this, as we know from winning everything last preseason in the U.S. and then going on to have the season that we did. But it was still fun. It doesn't take away from the excitement or the experimentation. I did like, the formation. It was odd, and obviously we're not going to play that a whole lot in the regular season. Sorry, I should not have drank a Coke, dude. I'm just gassy all of a sudden. We're not going to use that much in the regular season because we'll have actual strikers. I feel bad that Colombo even went to Singapore and Hong Kong to not play and then get shipped back and signed for Genoa. That was a little weird, but obviously they knew that transfers in talks, and that's probably why he didn't play.
I think so.
Which, it happens. He's not the first person to go on preseason and return quickly. It happens often. But one thing that I've said on the podcast for 3, maybe 4 weeks in a row now, and everyone could go back and listen, is I said, with the departure of Teo, we need a left back who's going to sit back, defend, lock down that left side, and then that will allow us to have a guy like Leao just camp on the halfway line because he's already faster and better than everyone else, and then just immediately break away as soon as we have possession and we get him that ball. And that's how the first 3 goals came, was doing that exact thing. First one was Leao, and then the next 2 he squared it to Loftus-Cheek and then Okafor, but it was the exact same thing. The first one was a pass from Pulisic. The second one was a pass from Okafor, and I don't remember who passed him the third one, but it was the exact same play every single time. So happy to see that A, what I had envisioned in my mind worked, and B, that it's working, that we're doing it. We're scoring the goals. So this was a fantastic game for Milan fans to watch. And Leao looks great, man. He looks like a totally different guy. You could see that he wants to impress Allegri. You could tell from the way that Allegri talks about him that he wants to get the most out of him, which any competent manager wants to get the most out of their stars, their best players, their world-class guys. For whatever reason, the last 2 managers we had wanted to prove a point that they were bigger than the players, and that backfired. So now we're going to see a guy who can put his arm around a player, actually talk to them one-on-one, not through the intermediaries on the squad, and give them the creative freedom while giving them a blueprint of how to defend and just letting them flourish. And I'm so excited for Allegri era part 2. Like, even with the 30 possession we're going to have most games, I don't see that as a problem. I think we're actually going to do really well this season. And yes, I just started this rant by saying don't look into preseason too much, but it's not just preseason. I'm also looking into the 7 years that he was winning the Scudetto at Juventus. The time he did it with us already. Obviously he had a rougher season when he returned to Juventus without winning any Scudetti, but he did win a trophy in his last game for Juventus as well. So we know he's such a good manager and what he brings to Italy, and I'm very confident right now.
Yeah, I'm growing in confidence. Like, I've always been happy with the appointment, and I thought we'd head in the right direction after a disastrous campaign. And I don't want to keep repeating it because it gets boring, but you can't read too much into the results of preseason. But what we're looking at and what we actually saw as a big step forward compared to the Arsenal game is us creating genuine danger and us looking an actual threat in transition. Now, there's some asterisks. Asterisks, I can never say that. They had a guy called Stevenson playing right back. They had Gravenberch, a midfielder, playing centre back. But they had Van Dijk out there, Robertson, Harvey Elliott, Szoboszlai, Salah. Wirtz was playing up front, felt a bit like a kind of false nine thing that he was doing. And yeah, as you mentioned, that Rio guy on the left wing who looked pretty good. So it's a bit of a cobbled together Liverpool team. So that's something to factor in. But just in terms of all we can do in terms of attacking patterns and things like that, it looked a lot more cohesive. You could see an idea that we were trying to carry out. We defended pretty well for the most part. I'm not going to lie. I think in that first half was when they could have probably done us damage with the quality that they had down the flanks. Salah above all, of course.
Yeah.
And it took a Szoboszlai screamer, really, to finally break us. 20-yarder curled into the top corner. And yeah, that was after Leao kind of set the tone with that burst where he gets one-on-one against his man and he roofs it with his left foot going across Alisson, to beat, I think, the best goalkeeper in the world with a shot like that. Impressive, a nice statement. And yeah, I just think it was a big leap forward. The second half we were quite ruthless actually when we were going the other way. Loftus-Cheek, I thought, had a brilliant game.
Yes.
We saw
he might be a weapon. Who knows? We saw his
Yeah.
first season with us, 10 goals. Maybe it happens again. That's the other thing. It's sorry to just cut you off and start ranting
No,
here,
it's fine.
but we don't even have our team. Modric is out, hasn't even stepped foot on the field. He's going to bring an upgrade. You could say he's 40 years old, but he's still the best. He's going to upgrade our midfield, which is looking good. You have all of our strikers not with us. We don't have Jimenez yet, who looks like he's been putting in the work in preseason or in training, in his off season here. And I don't want to say Jashari, but if we inevitably or eventually get him, like we have another guy who's going to upgrade it. So yeah, everything's looking really good. Ricci, his debut 2 games. I don't have much to really say about him, which for a guy who plays defensive mid, that's a good thing.
I agree.
So it's good. I'm happy with everyone, really.
Yeah, I had his. I was just looking for Ricci's stat line because we tweeted it out. He had 78 minutes against Liverpool, touched the ball 38 times, 93% pass completion rate, 83% long ball completion rate, and he won 100% of his duels. Admittedly, only 2 ground duels, that is, but good. Tidy. I would say tidy so far. I totally agree with you. We haven't spoken much about him because he hasn't given us a negative reason to do so. He's not going to be the match winner ever. But if he can do, well, not ever, he might be. But if you can do that job to a solid 6 out of 10 minimum standard every week, and in the mid, I think the players ahead of him will flourish, and that's important. And we're seeing that from his first couple of games already there. Yeah, I mentioned Loftus-Cheek, who was good. Leao was probably the man of the match because of what he created in the final third. We should mention Okafor as well because we sort of mentioned last week we got a question about Chukwueze and Okafor and what happens with those guys, and Okafor did something quite interesting in terms of, even though we were thinking about it, maybe others stopped to think because he took that first goal really well from the cutback, hammered it, and he pounced on the goal for the fourth. I mean, let's face it was essentially 3-2 because that fourth goal was an absolute calamity. Left him an open net to walk it into, but brace off the bench, you can't argue with it. That's what the stats say. So maybe see him get even more minutes again against Perth Glory and see what we're working with. And who knows, he might be one of those. There's always 1 or 2 in pre-season that change a coach's mind, and he could be that. But all we can talk about for now is a positive impact. Subs for this. So out of the 22 players that started the game, only 1 didn't come off, and that was Gravenberch for Liverpool. So there were essentially 21 substitutions made in this game. So that says a lot about the flow of it. Several drinks breaks and things like that. It is a training session, really, let's be honest. But we brought on Torriani, Okafor, Gabia, Musa at half-time. Then just after the hour mark, Bondo, Estupinian, come on to him in a sec, and Chukwueze yeah, they came on. And then Filippo Terracciano, Komoto, Vittorio Magni, and Matteo Dutu came on in the last 15 minutes of the game. Estupinian, he certainly got about, but it was a energetic but messy debut. I don't want to be too harsh on him. Jet lag, and he literally a first run out. Don't even know if he'd had a training session. I think he was just kind of thrown in there and good luck.
That was my thought.
Just got skinned a few times. I think he got dribbled past 8 out of 9 times, but rusty.
Something like that. I said 9 out of 10, and Stefano, who is having a ridiculous argument with himself in chat right now, had to go at me for that. But anyways, just calling him out as usual. So with the Estupinian, the jury's still out for me. Like I don't want to make an opinion yet because I didn't think he had a good game. But like you said, there's a lot of factors. He flew from wherever he was to Italy, did a medical, signed a contract, same day, flew literally across the entire planet, I think he met them in Singapore and then went to Hong Kong, which is obviously a much shorter flight. But again, another flight in another day. No training session.
Meet them in Hong Kong, actually, but even still, it's a longer flight.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there you go. So very long flight after all that. No training session. And then thrown on in the middle of a game, which everyone knows is harder to get up to speed on. And who does he go up against? Jeremy Frimpong, probably one of the most dynamic fullbacks or wingbacks in the game today. And yeah, he got fucking dusted. But I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't against that guy. I mean, he is so good, and now he's in a team like Liverpool. He's going to be even better. But
yeah,
had he have started this game, him being Estupinian, maybe it would have been different. Maybe not. I don't know. But I'm not going to use, this 25-minute cameo with an asterisk next to his name as a reason to hate the guy. Not yet. Give it a couple months, and then we'll see where I'm at.
Yeah. I expect. I think that I'll hold off on that actually because we've got to preview the Perth game briefly. Just looking as well what Liverpool were able to bring off the bench in this game. They named a mixed team really, bringing on Milos Kerkez, who was a nearly 50 million euro signing. Ibrahima Konate came on at halftime. Was one of the best centre backs in the Premier League last season. Curtis Jones, plenty of minutes in his career. Cody Gakpo, Frimpong, as you mentioned, Connor Bradley, who could well end up being the Trent replacement. Depending on where he sees Frimpong playing, and Mamad Dashvili, the goalkeeper. They're able to go and spend what was it like 40 million on a backup goalkeeper? Just ridiculous. And we're bringing on sort of, with respect to them, Komoto, Filippo Terracciano, Magni, and Dutu. And yeah, we held on. We got the win. A little bit of a scare at the end. A nice header from Gakpo to make it 3-2.
I was going to mention that goal because it was obviously a good goal. Like there's nothing you can say against it, but I think it just confused everyone. It looked like it was going to be a cross, so it looked like instead of going out for the ball, they all just kind of prepared for whoever was on the other side, and then it just kind of looped in. Which whatever, it's fine. But the fact that it happened in like the 93rd minute just shows that little bit of like turning off slightly, Yeah. And then I think it was erased about 15 seconds later with another goalkeeping error on the opposite and a much worse one. But definitely something to keep an eye on as we move into the season, and hopefully Allegri identified that as well as like, hey, we stay on until the whistle.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. It was Dutu who lost his man too. So you don't want to hammer a kid too much at all. It's a tough. It was a great centre forwards header as well, which is funny because he's been playing wing a lot for Liverpool. But he rose up and proper neck muscle inside the far post. Quite a nice goal. But yeah, then we capitalise on the error to ice the game. Good run out, more useful run out in terms of things that we can glean from it and. Confidence of the players and proof that we can do some damage going forward against a team that, no matter what combinations and situations they were put into, were able to field far more quality than what we were still. So good. Fine. Happy with that. Move on to Perth. this is the one where I'm quite happy that we've got this last because you've got the games against Premier League sides, the ones that you think you're going to find difficult. We come away with a win and a loss, and this should be where we learn a bit more about the team in possession. We should have the lion's share of the ball in this. We should be on top, and we should start to see some patterns of play and how we're going to. I'm not going to say Perth Glory will sit deep in a low block because it doesn't really make sense to do that in front of their own fans in a pre-season friendly or anything like that. But I think that we're going to be on the front foot more in this game, and it will be interesting to see what ideas we have in mind to break them down. So,
yeah, so this game will be
you've
interesting.
Just discovered the start.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is how little I know about the Australian A-League. I thought Perth Glory was like retired legends of Perth. I didn't realize that was the name.
Oh, like Milan Glory.
Yeah, so I was like, that's kind of cool, a little weird, but it's sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking maybe we'll see someone we know who just like an ADP who went to Australia for the last season of his career or something. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
What I come to find out is this is a competitive team who finished dead last with the worst attack and worst defense, conceding the most goals. Should be pretty straightforward. Their season just ended, so they're still, for the most part, fresh, right? They're playing the Australian Cup. 2 days ago, they got eliminated from the Australian Cup, which is interesting because they played. So July 27th was the Australian Cup, but then the previous Australian Cup game before that was May 13th, which came at the end of the actual season on May 4th. So why the 2-month gap? I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments will tell us, because I believe we have a decent chunk of Australian listeners. So if you guys explain the A-League to us.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. I'll just look and see if I recognised anybody in their squad. I do recognise Scott Wotton. He played for a while in England. And they got Luke Amos as well, who again played for a while in England. Ex-Spurs, I believe him. But yeah, nobody else that really jumps out at me there. And perhaps that is the reason why they finished dead last in the A-League, because quite a lot of the A-League teams are made up of, Premier League players kind of coming towards the end of their careers and moving out to the sun, better quality of life, etc. But
there is an Italian with the last name Pennington. So,
he's as Italian as Lorenzo.
Nicholas Pennington, which good for him, but threw me off.
Yeah. And this is our second game in Perth. I played Roma there in the post-season friendly last year, which was incredibly strange. But I haven't seen anything team news-wise for this particular one yet. But I can't imagine it'll be a wildly different lineup just because we don't have a great plethora of alternatives at the moment. Maybe a Stupidan gets a start just to give him
a chance.
45 minutes at a good rhythm. Maybe Gabia gets a game, to just see what we've got fully at centre back. Jimenez is meant to be better, so he should get some minutes in the tank. Midfield, the options remain the same, and I can't imagine he'll change Pulisic Leao unless he's conscious of the preseason work rates and therefore goes with like Okafor Chuck from minute one and then switches.
I think he probably should do that. I mean, switch it because we still have 2 more preseason games, August 9th, August 10th, one against Chelsea, and I don't remember who the other one is. The Irish team, right? Oh, we're playing Leeds in Ireland?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting, but obviously one of those will be almost entirely academy kids if it's the very next day, so.
Yeah.
I think Spurs did a double header this weekend, and they split the team into 2 and had them travel to different locations, and then they played 2 games. Odd.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do logistically for that. So the Leeds game is first on the Saturday in Dublin, and then the Chelsea game is on the Sunday. So as you said, the day after. Chelsea, I think, play very soon before it against Bayer Leverkusen. So it's a similar kind of vibe for them. So whether it's a split squad thing in a genuine, like, we're going to try mix it up a bit and send one there, or whether they'll just travel to both as a big squad and they'll have pre-arranged minutes assigned. That may be more likely, but who knows? It might be a genuine thing of like we play a much weaker team against Leeds and we try to test ourselves a bit more against Chelsea.
It's the world
We'll wait and see. The champions of the world. Keep inventing trophies, they'll keep winning them. That's what I keep being told. So yeah, Perth Glory is what it is. Hoping to see, as I said, hoping to see how we do with the lion's share of the ball, and it'll be another good opportunity to learn about how we're going to play. That's all I can really say. Let's move on and do some listener questions because I've got a big list of them. Rather than talk through the topics, I didn't want to ignore the questions. I think we're going to hit on them pretty much all here. Luds asks, where do you think Milan will be in the league at Christmas? Do you think we'll hit the ground running or will it take us a while to find rhythm?
I don't know about a while. And, it might take a couple weeks. It might take a month. Maybe we do hit the ground running, but I don't think it'll take a while. I don't think this is a situation where we're going into, Halloween time thinking, is Allegri even going to make it the rest of the year? Like, this team doesn't look good. I don't foresee that. I think we're really going to be in it just about the whole way this season. And I don't think that means we're going to be like competing for the Scudetto. There's a possibility that we could, based on what I'm seeing from like Inter under Kivu, and I don't think he's going to make it the whole season, to be honest with you. I think he's probably one of the first big sackings of the season. But I think Napoli's going to continue their crazy run. Lazio probably falls off a little bit. Roma under Gasparini's interesting to see. So there's a lot of variables. That said, I think around Christmas time, we should be in the top 4, but I wouldn't feel confident in any position except for saying not first.
Yeah. It does feel like with each passing week, Napoli just padding the gap to everybody else with the business that they're doing and things. They lost out on Undoy in the end, which is something, but I think Forest have overpaid by 25% there. I think if you're Napoli, you're happy to kind of back away from that deal and say, we're not doing a 50 million options. Package.
Maybe he goes back in for Okafor.
Maybe so, yeah. Just looking at the start that we have to the league season in terms of hitting the ground running. Cremonese at home, Lecce away, Bologna at home, Udinese away. I think it's first 4 where you've got to look to win at least 3 of them. Probably 4. You've got to try to take maximum points from that. Then you've got that tricky Napoli at home, Juve away, Fiorentina at home. I think those Napoli and Juve games in particular, how we approach them and how we come out of them, the other side, will be pretty indicative of where we're at. Because if we manage to sort of get 4 points, then we're like, oh, we'll be up there. But it's still too early to be like, if we lose to Napoli in that particular round, it's over. That's why I don't mind having them there, really. But then, the Juve away game, Allegri going back there will be interesting on the 5th of October. And then, there's an international break. It carries on. We've got another tough run with Atalanta, Roma, Inter and Lazio in 4 out of 5 games, sort of start through November. So there's some tough stretches in that early part of the season, which is why I don't see us storming off to any kind of lead at all. I think it will be a case of being in and around the top 4 pack. And I think Napoli could pull away again, to be honest. But I think that the rest will be quite congested for a little bit of time. And I think that we'll be in amongst it. So as much as that is a really boring answer, I think by the time Christmas comes around, we will be in or very close to the top 4. Would it be a failure if we were there? No, I don't think so. I don't think it would be, an instant failure if we were 7 points off top or whatever, because I think that we are dealing with, in terms of what Napoli are building, something that's going to be really, really hard to try and match after a season where you've finished 8th and you've got so much going on. And obviously, another thing to add into this as well is that there's at least a month left of the window. So we could bring in, and we're expected to bring in 3 more signings that could really change how everyone feels about this squad. A new starting right back like Gueladue, another central midfielder is coming, be it Jashari or somebody else, and another striker. So, you get those three pieces in, maybe right towards the end of the window, you're going into that first tough double game stretch with a bit of wind in your sails, and who knows? Who knows? I think it's going to be a really, really interesting year this year in Serie A. As we kind of mentioned when we did the carousel episode, because so much has changed that, like, when the dust's up in the air, it's hard to know how it's all going to land. But I just feel comfortable and quite safe with what we've chosen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I echo all those sentiments. I mean, you can't finish where we did last season and then go into the next season with the only objective being winning the Scudetto, right? It just doesn't happen. Napoli did it. Don't get me wrong. It can happen. But even they didn't say their objective was to win the Scudetto. It was to compete for it and get back in top four. And that's what our objective should be. If we're going into Christmas, even in fifth, it's not the end of the world. It's like, okay, as long as we're not, a 20-point gap between fourth and fifth or something, but if we're around there, it's good. As long as we end the season with Champions League football, I would say it was a successful year. Love to throw in a trophy in there. We have another Super Cup we could win. Coppa Italia is a possibility. The league would be fantastic, but I'm not counting on that.
Yeah, fully agree with all that. And you're hearing it in the media as well. When players are being asked and Allegri's being asked, they're repeating the same line, which is that Milan need to get back into the Champions League. And I think that rather than, it's not going to be a case of like we're ruling ourselves out of anything. It'd be silly to do that when we've only really got one thing to play for. But it's more speaking positively about what we want to achieve. And I think that that's totally the right thing to do. We heard Fonseca speaking last season until November about winning the league title. Remember, after that 0-0 at home against Juventus, he said, I believe we can still win the title. It's like, we're fucking ninth. Like, what are we doing? Anyway, Steve McQuark, pod has recently come into some big money. I wish it had. But only so much so that the budget can afford one of these guests. Who are you going for? Number one, Allegri on the main pod to talk about the upcoming season, tactics and transfer strategy, or Paolo Maldini on pub chat to talk about what really went down between him and Redbird. You can interchange the guests, so Maldini would have to speak to Lorenzo and Stefano, and we'd get Allegri.
We take Allegri then.
Yeah, we're
it's a me forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is the answer. Just to expand that a bit though. There's someone's side of the story that I've always wanted to hear with regards to the Maldini thing, and we've never heard it. And that's mostly because he's jumped straight into employment at other clubs. I'd love to give Massara an honesty potion and say, how do you think this really went down? Because he's not the middleman. Obviously, his loyalty was to Maldini. They walked out together. But he probably saw the whole thing a little bit to the side and the head-on confrontation that was happening. I'd love to know what he really thought about what was happening. Did he just instantly look at Cardinale and was like, oh, come on, like, you bang out a lie and we're going to have to walk for this? Or might he have looked at his mate and right-hand man Maldini and thought, oh, we're going to lose our jobs because of this, I would love to know that, but we're probably not going to hear that side of the story. And I think one thing I would say is I think we do kind of know Maldini's side of the story. It's been very widely publicized. And you don't have to read between the lines very much because, it's all out there. So that was a good question. I like the hypotheticals like that.
Yeah, it's fun.
Darren Torres, how are you feeling about the possible return of Il Condor Galliani?
I love it. I think it would be fantastic. Look, even if he's here for just 2 years after Scaroni making the Jashari situation 10 times worse this morning, it's like, I don't even care if we bring in a rock to replace him. Just get him out, get rid of Scaroni. He doesn't do anything helpful. If we get Condor back, that would be sick just in terms of being a fan of the club. We get Allegri back and then we get Galliani same year. Like, that would be a lot of fun for the nostalgia in me. And I do think he's the type of guy who, by the way, you and I both all have said we would bring him back if we had the opportunity before, when mentioning how we have zero pull in Serie A and with the counties to get the stadium situation done. Now that we actually have a direction, I say now, it's like the third or fourth time we've had a direction on the stadium, but getting a guy like Galliani in can actually make that happen. You know, before he was in, yes, when we initially started this project, but there was no money, and now there is. So I think he could actually get it done. And I think that's what he would come in, maybe like a 2-3 year agreement to really push that through, get a stadium either built or San Siro renovated and purchased away from the municipality, and then he rides off into the sunset. Because he is old. I don't know how old he is. He's 82, I think.
80.
80. Yeah, I mean,
he's always a bit younger than Berlusconi.
He's one of those guys that I don't think will ever stop working. He's not going to go and retire. He will work until he dies. But I don't think he wants to work here until he dies, you know.
It probably push him a bit closer to the finish line, I would say.
To me.
For want of a better phrase. Yeah, it's funny because, as you mentioned, we've spoken about it before, but I think we've spoken about it in terms of someone like a Galliani type figure, someone that can take us back to the days when we had the kind of authority and the presence within institutions like the Lega Serie A Council, but he's even well known on the UEFA stage and things like that from all our years in the Champions League, being the best team in Europe and things like that. So yeah, when it then switches to, well, it might actually be the guy that we're talking about finding, you know, the parallel for. How do I feel about it? Like my instant reaction is, as a 2 or 3 year thing, whatever, I can see the immediate benefits. And if he'd be open to it, then I think that there's a discussion to be had to work out between everyone if it was the right thing to do. I'd love him to come in and fill the obvious role of president, because our current president has put his whatever in his mouth again by making a stupid public comment, as he does seemingly once a month. So I think with fan approval at an all-time low on that particular front, it would be an instant upgrade. But I don't know. It's tough. Part of me is like, just leave that alone, you know. Vesper just gone past that alone. Might be Galliani heading to close the deal with his gold tie on. Look, we're all gluttons for nostalgia, aren't we? That's why that's a part of the Allegri appeal, really, as well. But I was just thinking about it. You know, Ibra's there now in a managerial role rather than a playing role. Pato was taken on the preseason tour. There's stuff about Galliani coming back. It's like, get the 2010 and 11 band back together, you know. But yeah, the logical part of my brain says just leave that alone, you know, because if he was 75, be all over it, get him back immediately. But I think he's owed a nice retirement. He's not going to take it, but I don't think that he should upgrade in terms of stressful jobs at this point. You know, as much as I love him and thank him for what he's done for the club, I do think that chapter is probably closed for now.
He left Monza already, right?
No, I believe he's still there. Or did he step down? Hold on, let me just double check. I thought he's still senator of the Italian. He is. He's still the CEO of Monza, according to Wikipedia.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And the honorary chairman is obviously Berlusconi's son Paolo, so he ain't going to sack him, is he? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's another thing. He's not just at some random club. He probably feels a bit of a responsibility to try and leave Monza in a better place than what they are right now, because of Silvio's passing and everything like that. So yeah, it's a complicated one. Is that? We'll see if the rumours develop. DWO asks, I know it's a friendly, but anyone who understands the sport will notice the drastic difference in our compactness and play. Do you think the 3-5-2/4-4-2/3-4-3 hybrid formation will be the main formation this season? Or is it temporary until... So that's an interesting one. The hybrid formation, well, this is going to sound like a really condescending answer, but that sort of is how football is. hybrid formations. You generally have a shape in defense, a defensive shape, a transition shape, and an attacking build-up shape. You even have specific shapes within it in terms of build-up: 3+2, 2+3, 2, all that kind of shit. So I think that what we're seeing is probably that, but with a little bit more license to interchange when we have transitions, as you kind of see with the movement. But one thing I think we have definitely seen is that when we get the ball back, we are going like an arrow to goal. And that kind of reminds me of the purely lockdown teams, being incredibly solid defensively. Well, we did still let in goals, but more like going forward, we would try to take the most direct route to goal and exploit the strength of our players moving forward. So I think that's the big thing to take. With preseason games, I kind of see it both ways. I do not want to put too much weight into them and say what I'm looking at here will be the definitive system that we're going to play for the season, especially when we're playing without a recognised centre forward. That could change everything. When Jimenez is able to play, we might go to play in a front three, and then the rest will sort itself out. But as we both said, I believe, when Allegri was hired, if he was watching every game last season, he will have seen that we looked at our best playing with 3 centre-backs and wing-backs. And I just wonder if we're now starting to see that materialise. Because no matter what about the shape in and out of possession, if he names 3 centre-backs and 2 wing-backs, you know what you're going with there. You know it's going to be a 5 out of possession. So yeah, I just wonder if he's toying with that idea a little bit.
Yeah. Yes, I don't have anything else to add. I mean, that's exactly what I would say too. So,
and there's a little bit of a follow-on question to this from Casey Cordray on Twitter, or X now. Seeing how Allegri has used Leao in the first couple of pre-season games, can we assume he's trying to evolve Leao's game by using him as a striker in a 2-man attack? And could he succeed in that role? It's something that we've seen other managers try. Pioli, when he first started putting him in the team in that 1920 season, put him up front alongside Ibra.
Yeah.
Another Vespa.
It's crazy. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry I couldn't mute it in time. But yeah.
Gattuso as well. When we signed Leao, the idea was we signed him as a striker. So that was the whole reasoning behind purchasing him. Obviously, he became a world-class left wing, and there's no reason to change that. But I don't think it's a bad thing to also put striker on his resume. How many elite level world-class players have we seen make that transition, right? Ronaldo was a left wing for so long, and then in his older age became a striker. Not that Leao's anywhere near old, but it just shows versatility, and it's good because ultimately, look, forwards are forwards. Their objective is to score goals, move the ball up the pitch, and that's what he'll do. And having him in a 2-striker formation is helpful because that could also explain why they're saying they want a guy who's in the penalty box, like Vlahovic. You get the free-roaming second striker in Leao, and then you got the guy up top, Vlahovic. I think Jimenez will play that role just fine as well. My concern is what happens to Pulisic if we do that, right? If we go to a 3-5-2 and Leao is all of a sudden a striker, then where does Pulisic go? Is he just a midfielder who has license to roam? Because then why are we signing Jashari, Modric, Ricci? If he's just going to be a right wing back, do we trust him to defend well? I don't know. So I don't think it'll be a permanent thing. I think it'll be in a pinch solution, just because it displaces so many other players. But he, as in Leao, is very capable.
Yeah, I wanted to display this visual. I'm not going to go too tactical, don't worry. But for those who are listening, it's the football pitch divided up into 18 squares, effectively.
Rectangles.
They're rectangles. Yeah, yes, they are. But in terms of where Leao's positioning was, we're used to him operating in zones 10, 13, and 16, down the left flank, trying to drive into 17, sometimes cutting into 14. With the implication of him playing as an out-and-out centre forward is that he'd be playing in zones 14, 17. He'd be in central areas. He'd be in and around the box, and that's not what we've seen. I'd say what we've seen so far in pre-season is actually him covering 10 11, 13, 14, 16, 17. It's Messi trying to explain that. But you know what I mean? He's almost being given that entire left part of the pitch and being told to try be direct on goal when you can. And that's what I think the split striker thing is. You know, when you've seen teams that have used them playing with two wingers kind of thing, that's what you tend to see. It's not that he's restricted to any particular part. It's that he's given that license to roam. And I think Pulisic, you've seen that with the Liverpool game more so when he managed to get on the ball a little bit more. He, in turn, is probably doing 11, 12, 14, 15, 17, 18. You know, he's predominantly playing on the right, but, you know, they're meshing into the middle when the opportunity arises to do so. So effectively what I'm trying to say is, I think in a two-striker formation, it's going to be more about Leao standing off the left, almost on the halfway line, you know, ready to spring and go. And when you see him in that position when he's receiving the ball, you're not thinking he's a striker. You know, you're thinking that he's going to start wide and come in. I am really fascinated already by what he wants to do with Leao. One thing I will say that we've seen in the brief bit of time in pre-season is that athletically he looks as good as he's ever looked. Again, small sample size, and yes, there's caveats with regards to the opponents that he's been facing, but my God, when he's got in the open field, he's been gone. And he looks even stronger. He looks to have bulked out a little bit more as well. And Salamakers has as well. I noticed that.
I actually really like Salamakers as a right wing back right now. I think he's looked good, obviously preseason, but we saw him do this with Roma, and we saw him do it for us last preseason. I think he's improved into quite a player that I didn't think he ever could become. You know, I was a big critic of his, and I'm really liking how he is. So I think we could get a lot out of him, whether we sign a guy like Due or not. I think there's a place for Salamakers in this team.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sorry to display this thing again, but one thing I have noticed as well in the preseason games is when defending with either a flat back four or a back five in some circumstances, picking that ball up around the left back position, as we have done many times in the 1-4, you either playing that one pass into midfield, where Pulisic has sometimes been waiting and then launching the ball, or knocking it down the channel for Leao. But either way, it seems to be a very obvious ploy to win the ball back in that area and get him running. You know, that's it's all we've got really at the moment in terms of threat. That's probably part of it as well, and yeah, opposition stuff also. But excited to see how that develops. Perth game, when's that? Thursday, I think it is. I don't know, Thursday. And then, yeah, 2 more friendlies and then we're into it. Bari in the Coppa Italia. There will be no Trofeo Berlusconi, or even though it was rumoured, they never ended up officialising it.
Maybe because they decided to work on Galliani's return instead.
Well, yeah. That would have been some announcement, that, wouldn't it?
Like maybe they announce it then.
Yeah, he does the first half as Monza's CEO, and then he just switches over his badge. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't realise we didn't get asked a question, but we ought to very briefly mention the Jashari thing. It's all got a bit mad again, you know, just when we thought everybody settled into, okay, we're not going to speak publicly about things anymore. Tari comes out and gives a little interview to Gazzetta dello Sport, and then our new raised offer has not been declined, but they've told us they're not going to answer it. According to Fabrizio, I don't really. If that's not a rejection, I don't know what is. Sort of been left on red.
Well, that's what it is too. They're basically saying it was a disrespectful offer, and they're not even going to acknowledge it. Which, fair enough. Like, if it took us a month to raise it, 1 measly million, yeah, you could say there was a change in the bonuses and the formation, but it appears very clear to me that all Bruges wants is a record fixed fee. That's all they want. And you know, they're arguing about it in the chat right now because some Inter fans are saying don't pursue Lookman based on the price. Well, Jashari's 22, and he probably is worth a record Belgian league fee, which is only 38. It's not like it's something ridiculous. If that's what we got to pay it. Or move on. Get something else. Get someone who could help us in another position. I don't know. But, I mean, as preseason continues and Loftus-Cheek looks better and Fofana looks better and, Ricci's looking good and we know what we're going to get out of Modric, all of a sudden it's like, hey, do we need to do this? Of course we need to, because we know Modric is only around for 2 years. But the idea that we could just say, look, either you pay up or we're going to move on for one season, that's a possibility. At what point do we put on our big boy pants and just say, we're not doing this shit anymore?
Yeah. I just looked because Ben researched it. Since the start of June, we have done, as a site, 230 something articles on Jashari. So allow me to be the first to say I am very fucking bored of it now. It is so tedious. It's pathetic from both sides. I think people are being too reductionist in trying to say that it's one side's fault or the other. I think if you break it down bit by bit, there's sides, there's things that both sides would probably wish that they did differently. But the bottom line is, with where we stand right now, after what's coming up to 7 weeks of negotiating, we actually don't appear to be that much closer to landing him at all. We certainly haven't gained in leverage. We're still aware what needs to be done. For whatever reason, we won't do it. My current working theory is that we are persisting and insisting with this because we don't have an alternative. Because I've tried to research similar molds of players for an article, who we could turn to instead, that kind of thing. It's really hard to find somebody with the same metrics in terms of his strengths being a combative midfielder who's really good at progressing the ball. You're talking about some of the best in Europe at doing that. We're talking about prime Modric's and things like that. It will be difficult to find somebody else. If we turn to Javi Guerra, for example, he's a totally different player. Xhaka was and is a totally different player. So I think that is a big part of it. We won't turn away until we absolutely have to, and then we might know we have to remodel the midfield. I also wonder if we've already got the budget kind of mapped out for exactly how we're going to spend the pennies that we get. And we've already pushed it as far as we can, and we're already eating into the budget for other areas, and that's why they are loath to do it. There may be something I'm missing. There may be something that comes out after all this is settled one way or another, and the story comes out that that Bruges maybe did move the goalposts, or that our offer never actually was that close, and the media got it wrong. Because it does seem strange to be in this kind of Mexican standoff for best part of 2 months. It's it's boring now. It really is boring. This tit for tat in the media, both clubs behaving unprofessionally, trying to drop what they hope is the final grenade, and then it's all over and done with. It will never deal with them again, and they probably will never deal with us again either. I think this is it. But one thing I will say is that it needs to be resolved by the 3rd of August. If he's not in the door by the first day of them returning to train back at Milanello and prepare for that first game, I don't see the point. You've got to try get someone in before then, because time is money. And you do think then, should we just paid up at the very start? You have to pay that little bit on top, but that 6 weeks of preseason preparation is gold dust. So I'm disappointed with the way it's all played out. I feel sorry for the kid. He's 22, but he's doing absolutely everything in his powers, and he's probably a little bit frustrated with both sides. And my gut feeling has always been that it gets done, but now I don't think it does. I just think that too much muddy water has gone under the bridge, shall we say.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a problem the moment they said this guy was at Bruges, just PTSD from CDK. I'd never wanted to go this route. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I knew who he was prior to the link. So when they first came up, I said, don't even bother. It's a Bruges player. If there's no one else with his metrics, like you're saying, if they are prime Modric levels or close enough to, it's like, what else do you do? So you get it, you understand why we're doing the negotiation, but it's like, damn, Tare's new, so he wasn't around for that. But the rest of these fuckers were. They knew what we were getting into. They could have said, hey, Igle, this is how they operate. If you want him, this is what we have to pay. But then it goes back to like, well, Milan just won't do it, Because I'm sure he would have been like, guys, can we just fucking pay this, get this shit over with? Like, but
Yeah. Frustrating. Like this is how these sagas go sometimes, and we've had countless of them. It's not just the CDK thing. We had it with Monaco for Fofana, and that's hard to say. Say that after a few pints. Even Valencia with Musa, Villarreal with Chukwueze. All these things that started at the beginning of the summer in terms of negotiations and took us into the last 15 days of the window. That's kind of what you get when you're trying to operate the way that we are, and that's unfortunately. Fellaini once said it, didn't he? It's like we need to try and spend every euro better than our rivals. That's a lot of insight into how we're trying to do things. But yeah, as I say, I've just gone more negative than positive on it all now, and I'm already starting to think about who it could be instead. But we'll see how it develops. I hope by the time that. Well, I hope we've got a bonus pod to do on Friday, profiling Jashari and why we're so happy with the 40 million that we
see
finally
the message we just got in the chat.
No.
Meeting between Milan and Bruges on Thursday.
Oh, that way they're just going to stand and stare at each other for 2 hours.
They're gonna. Nice to meet you. So there's a player interested in.
Yeah. I saw someone tweet saying we should put in offers for 2 other Bruges players and get them to refuse to come to training as well and just like destabilize the entire club. But yeah, I've read so many interesting perspectives on it all, and I don't think any one is right or wrong. Well, some are wrong actually, but I don't. Nobody knows apart from who is in that room doing the talking. And I think that the Belgian v. the Italian media war has skewed a lot of stuff one way or the other. But yeah, I've seen so many people saying, yeah, but Bruges, you're right to stand their ground and we're behaving like bullies, getting the player to turn against them. But then others saying, well, it's a really good offer on the table and the players asked nicely to leave and now he's having to put... I get it. The truth is probably always somewhere in the middle. But as I said, after talking for it for another 15 minutes, I'm fed up a bit now. We'll wrap it up there. Managed to do over an hour. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Hope you are enjoying the preseason. Being back underway. We're back next week with more recaps. And yeah, I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. Find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher. AJ, cheers for joining.
See you in the future.
Have a good week, everyone.
Llega Pujol!